everyone. It's Chuck Hogan from Your Best Life, and welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV on channels 249, 250, and 251. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on the respective apps and iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. The app is completely free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also, if you can believe it, all smart TVs 2016 forward. So thank you so much for joining us on Your Best Life tonight. You know, different times in life you get to have exchanges and conversations with people that you love and respect and adore for a myriad of different reasons. This guest is no exception. Tanya Oliver is not only a world changer, she is a peak performance strategist. She works with athletes and entertainers, as well as industry professionals, corporate C-suites executives. Well, who doesn't she work with? Well, if you're someone who isn't seeking to live your best life, or if you're someone who's seeking to play small, don't call this woman, because it's a waste of her time and yours. We know that you're not that person because you're watching us tonight. So please welcome to Your Best Life, my friend Tanya Oliver. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Chuck, for having me. Such an honor.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I know you're joining us from the East Coast in sunny Florida. See that ambient lighting coming in off the water. Plus, you have that amazing mural in the background, which just it extrapolates on your creativity and your knowledge, the tree of life, and of course, this multicolored reasons and seasons ideology that we both have. I want to ask you a question. I want to just jump right in for our viewers tonight, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
It is, what compelled you to start helping people at this uber high level of setting standards and helping people live a peak performance life?
That is a great question. And the biggest thing is I had to create a lane of what I wanted. I grew up an athlete, and a lot of people, surprisingly, when I go on stages and I speak, they have been athletes. And any athlete has this process of growth and transformation, and they're wanting to get to the next level. And it just ends up being their career ends up being their new sport. And I just really wanted to be my best self. I wanted to operate in my full potential versus a possibility of it. I was tired of just feeling like, I think in any stage of life where I was just like, there's got to be more to this. How do I tap into that segment of excellence? And I just was on this journey. Maybe some are going to call it obsession, but I call it a passion. And just figuring out what the core of how to tap into me becoming mentally, physically, emotionally, and energetically my most elite self.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I mean, in the YBL community, we talk about faith, family, fitness, and finance, and it's in all three areas, body, mind, and spirit. It's interesting, and I love what you said, and thank you for sharing that. There's this ideology sometimes that simply by following someone else or copying what someone else does, so doing what someone else does, is going to get you the same results. What would you say is so important about that driving force within, that deep purpose or why for people? What would you tell someone, Tanya, if they go, oh, well, if I just follow Tanya and I just do everything that she does, when she does it, how she does it, I'm going to live Tanya's life?
Yeah. I can just go back to like what you're asking is that it reminds me of a conversation I had with a client. She's super frustrated. And she's like, I really want that end result. I want that person's end result. But she was feeling defeated and overwhelmed because the path that was taken to get that end result did not align to her heart. And it didn't hit her in the heart. One thing we always get clear on is like, we have to teach our mind to become obedient to our heart, because our heart is really where God has planted that vision, that dream, that goal, that passion. And we have to keep that alive, because that's really what living on purpose is about. And I know that you guys really are big on that whole philosophy of like living on purpose. And, I told her, I go, I'm not going to say any names, but I was like, did you ever think that there's multiple paths to an end result? So there's multiple paths. Here's your end target. This was my path that was in alignment to my journey that felt right. Of course, there's going to be challenges of getting from where you are to where you want to be. There's going to be mental challenges, physical challenges, emotional challenges, spiritual challenges. But you're level of journey that you're going to keep on keeping on.
Yes.
And so once I said that sometimes, and I think this is what people need to understand, sometimes you're going to be the one to create the path.
Absolutely. You know what? Brilliant. Because people are thinking that the formulation is going to be that if I just do the one thing. And I go, it's never about one thing. It's about everything. And someone else's journey isn't yours. That the result or the outcome, so to your point, and excuse the pun, because this is actually the way I phrase it, I go, how many ways are there to get to Miami? And people like going, wait, what? And it just so happens, y'all, guess where she's at. And so, Miami. And so the reason why I state this, though, is I go, well, plane, train, automobile, walking, water buffalo, horse-drawn carriage, hang glider. They're like, wait, what? I said,
do we have a horse-drawn carriage? Where is it? I want to know about those.
You know what? They have them in Central Park and in New York, and they have them actually in Fort Worth, Texas. But the whole reason I say that is what's the experience that you need to have along the way, and how's it going to make you feel? One of the things that's so systemic, and I love this about you, you have this insatiable drive, but it comes in this very organized ideology as to the methodology and a system of how to get things done. So it's not by happenstance. And it's very much about sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, because you can do a curl one time. It doesn't mean you're going to build biceps. And so having these rituals and having these processes becomes extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you find for peak performance? Because again, we have folks that are just starting out in the beginning right now. And so I'm actually going to ask us to back up so we can take a step back so we can go 2 steps forward quickly. What would you tell someone in the beginning stages, Tanya, of them finding their purpose and their why so they can really get clear about what performance and what that would feel like for them?
Yeah. Well, 3 core things that I really focus in on with people and human performance is self-mastery, emotional intelligence, and operating at peak performance during all circumstances, the good and the bad. And there's a few things that because I always have like my little notes on here to keep me organized. But one thing to understand is understand your personality. A lot of people that have that drive, that passion, they are high-end achievers. And when you understand your personality, you also understand the things that are going to sabotage your success, because what could be working for you can also work against you. For example, the extremist personality. So you're either all in or you're not in. And I know you guys are probably like shaking your head. Oh my gosh, that's me. Yes. And so you can understand and also the rebellious side. Whereas it's like, don't tell me what to do. If you tell me to go right, I'm going to go left. So when you understand that, you can have structure, you can have freedom within structure.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand your personality and the things that have not been working for you up until this point, because when you're talking about a very beginner level, you mentioned something about daily repetitions. You're going to suck until you become somewhat good. You're going to be somewhat good until you become like great. You're become great until you become excellent, until you become a pro. It's just understanding the process of it requires daily repetition.
Yes.
And the more reps you put in, like the better you're going to get there. And a lot of people's like, well, how fast am I going to get there? The daily practices that you put in yoga, they say, because this is a question in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and they say, well, how fast am I going to get there? Well, how frequently are you doing it? So if you're practicing every day, you're going to get there the fastest. If you're practicing 3 times a week, you're kind of going to get there medium. If you're practicing 1 time a week or whenever you feel like it, then you're most likely never going to get there. And to answer your question, as far as like where to start off, is to find somebody who has what you want, and see what they're doing. You don't necessarily have to follow their path, but get an idea that it's been done. And my biggest recommendation is, I'm very big on like practical tools. So if you create like a T-chart, and you just do a T-chart and you write out all the things that you don't want because you don't like how it makes you feel. Mm-hmm. On the other side, you would write the opposite, because what I realized in the beginning phases is people are not as clear and certain as they think that they are. And they don't know what they want because there's a lot of self-doubt.
We have a lot of confusion when it comes to our IQ and our EQ. and this conflict that occurs. And so I love everything that you just said. It really makes so much sense. One part, and you alluded to this, and I'd like to go a little further down this rabbit hole, and that is being truly authentic, honest with yourself. It's there's a tendency for people to use softeners. And I'm not saying that one needs to berate oneself or chastise oneself. I'm actually saying be kind, just like you would to a child, because you don't know what you don't know, yet you know what you know. And to your point, there are people who have exercised martial arts, yoga, different disciplines their entire life. And for most people, they've never achieved perfection. They've never even achieved a level of, I will say, professionalism. What they've achieved is a level of competency, both conscious and unconscious. Now, someone, so give me an example of unconscious competence. I said breathing. You don't even think about it till you put your focus there. And yet you can go ahead and change the regulation of your breath, the volume, diaphragmatic breathing by comparison to shallow breathing, the intensity of the breath, the length of time that you hold your breath, the calmness and stillness of your breath, the power of your breath. All these things, these modalities only come when we actually have awareness. So I go, you're consciously incompetent because you're going to breathe regardless. If you stop, it's only for a period of time because your body has certain modalities and needs that it cannot go without. So to your point, it's understanding, and you hit the nail on the head, the feelings that are associated to this, because everything we do is to emote, experience, or to be able to channel feelings. And if we don't feel good, then it's like, well, then why do I continue down this path? Yet so many people do. They go, what choices do I have? I said, infinite number of choices. You're going to get what you're willing to settle for. You're going to get what you're willing to tolerate. And so once someone has gone through this initial manifestation and clarification of finding, we'll call it possibly purpose and passion, what helps elevate and take someone to the next level, Tanya? Like if you're working with someone who, let's say, has been in their career for a couple of years and now they've just been killing it, but they don't feel completely fulfilled, or their social life isn't where they'd like it to be. They may have plenty of money in the bank, but they're looking for more. What type of insights or distinctions would you give for that individual?
Gosh, I'm like taking so many notes here on topics you're describing. I think the first thing is, number one, I'm very big on looking up words and getting clear. You know, you mentioned the word like clarity a few times, and you also mentioned the word manifestation, but a lot of people don't even know what manifestation is. Manifestation is elevated emotion. It's like a math equation: elevated emotion plus a clear intention plus inspired action, not forceful
Yes.
action, but inspired action. And you also mentioned authenticity, and authenticity is just being true to what you want. And if you're not clear on what you want, then you're never going to be authentic. Or what I've realized, especially with high-end achievers and elite entrepreneurs, is that they have this guilt and shame around prioritizing their self-care. And one of my favorite quotes is by Katie Reed, and she says, self-care is giving the world the best of you versus what's left of you. And one thing I talked about in a mastermind the other day was that I asked a bunch of people, I'm like, what do you value? And people like, my family, my business. Not one person in the group, which wasn't surprising to me because I've been doing this work for 18 years. Not one person said, I value myself. I value my time and I value my energy. And we will prioritize what we value. But if we don't, if we don't value ourselves, we're never going to prioritize like ourselves, and that you're a human being before you're anything else. One thing that I suggest, getting back to your question, is daily audits. I'm very big on auditing my day, auditing my behavior, seeing where I was off. I like to use my day as like a light system, where if my day, and I teach my clients this, was my day a red light? Was my day hopefully never red? Because when it's yellow, I listen. And this goes back to prioritizing. It's like if your kid gets sick, because Chuck, I know you have children, right? How many children do you have?
Three.
So if it's one of the kids gets sick and the wife is not available and it's daddy daycare and you're responsible for the day and one of the kids is really sick, would you just be like, oh, I don't have time for you right now. Like, this is super inconvenient. You're going to have to wait.
Of course not.
Exactly. But how many times do we do that to ourselves?
In fact, it's way too often, way too often. You know, there's this precipice and this precedent. I say it's a precipice because some people are tithering on the edge, and they're deciding whether or not do they withdraw from the edge, do they jump off the edge. It's like going, okay, why? In some instances, they construe self-care as being selfish. And it's like, to your point, is there's this guilt factor, right, that goes along with that. And so I love what you said 20 years ago, actually 22 years ago. And it was a saying that my Japanese grandfather gifted me, and it's very similar to the one that you quoted. But I developed this concept, which was my family and I deserve the best of me and not what's left of me. Because I found myself moving heaven and earth for every client. Much like I know, Tanya, I know you well. I know how hard you work for your clients. And I also commend you for something. Because my dear friend, you take care of self. And that's beautiful. It's like, same, eating right, working out, making sure that I'm getting the sleep and the care that I need. Because if I am not being my best, there's a very shallow chance that I'll be able to do my best.
Amen.
It doesn't mean I won't try.
You're not capable, and that's the thing. You're not capable of showing up for the job, even your work.
Yeah, because your capacity drops. And on top of that, if not to get into the metaphysical, but where you're resonating at as far as your frequency is concerned. So if you're living in low frequency, you're going to attract other low frequency people. There is no attraction strategy for elevated people who are holding a higher standard at that point. So the aspiration is that you keep seeing this, oh my gosh, I'd love to be like them. And it's like, okay, then be you, be your true authentic you. Because when you're at that level, your resonance frequency is so high that anything that's even close to that metric is brilliant, beautiful, bright, and bold. And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what you do, but I'd love to get to know you better, because just the conversation and your energy and where you resonate, it's like, my goodness, you have gravity. And yes, that's why this amazing woman and I are having this conversation.
I do want to say too, because if there's people where, especially if you're in the beginning phases of your personal growth and development work, and even if you think you've been doing it for a while, your negative thoughts and emotions are a very resourceful part of you, and they're always going to be a part of you. But it's just information. And if you shut it down and shut it up, you're never going to receive the information in order to elevate. So that stuff, if you're like watching this and you're starting to be like, man, I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't even have a vision. I can't even see above and beyond like the survival mode I'm in right now. Like, it's okay, because you can leverage off of that, and everything is about shape shifting. So that's needed in the process of just like elevating and receiving your next level upgrade.
That great distinction. There are no negative emotions. There aren't. It's just whether or not they're useful to you in the moment, and what type of fuel do they provide to you as well. The other part is, when you ask clarifying questions, you can get distinctions around how you're really feeling, because it's never about the event. It's always about the meaning that's attached to the event, as we know. I want to go back to something you said earlier, just real quick, and that is, words are currency. And having very clear understandings as to what that languaging means to you. Because oftentimes people throw around language, and especially in the world of self-improvement or life enhancement, and they'll go, oh, so what's a transformation? What's a breakthrough? And it's like, oh, okay. And it's exactly what you said. It's a shift. It's an opportunity. Whatever languaging resonates for you, and get clear on it.
Yeah.
So please.
And a lot of it too is also like a playbook. Like, what might serve you in this season doesn't mean you need to carry it with you next season. And it's important to understand, to have grace and compassion for yourself. You mentioned this earlier. during your seasons and phases, because there really is there never is a there. And I think once you finally understand that, you feel like you could like you could breathe, like there's a form of relief. And you always want to think of like, well, what's on the other side of this?
Mhm.
And you don't have to like take last season into this new season, but when you understand and you gain clarity, something that I learned years ago, because everybody kept talking about confidence and they're like, how are you so confident? How are you so confident? I was like, let me go backwards for a second and get to the core of confidence. And I spent like a good hour researching where confidence comes from, and it comes from clarity. So when
Mhm.
I speak, and you can feel my frequency of a certainty that I know what I'm talking about, because I've spent a lot of time on this, and then also coaching and seeing transformation and change, and even in my own life. And so confidence is a byproduct of clarity, and knowing what you don't want actually leverages and gives you clarity on the shape shifting of the opposite. So if you know you're feeling exhausted all the time and overwhelmed, the opposite of exhaustion is vitality and living life vivaciously, which is one of my new favorite words right now. So
Love it.
it's like vivacious. And that word, every decision I make, every conversation I have, whether if I'm speaking at an event, what I'm writing in my emails, my clients that I take on need to line up to my new focal point, which is actually something called power words. So the goals are intrinsic goals versus extrinsic goals.
Beautiful. Love that. Well, and again, because it's what's
Mhm.
inside that is going to fuel you. And in life, there's different situations. There's different situations that fuel you, and there's those that feed on you. Um, it's really about, as you mentioned multiple times now, clarity and having those distinctions. It's kind of harkened back to me. I heard this representation today, and I thought it was brilliant. They said, if you've lived in Los Angeles your entire life, and you know all the roads, the back roads, the highways, the byways, the neighborhoods, the shortcuts. And he goes, and you're really, really good at maps. You're really good at navigating this huge metropolitan city. And then you go to Italy, you go to Milan, and you use the same map. No, but you're really good at
Mhm.
maps, but it doesn't apply because it's a whole different
Mhm.
ecosystem. You'd be in the same car, same person driving. So part of this is, to your point, is understanding the ecology of the space too, and what's required of you in order for you to feel your best in that space. So when we talk about confidence, there's a number of words that resonate around this too. For some people, it might just be that they feel secure, that they have a certain level of
Mhm.
certainty. But there's in NLP and neuroscience conditioning, there's this ideology that the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty that you can comfortably live with.
Mm.
What most people are seeking is on the other side of fear and change. And it's like, okay, this is where it gets interesting for folks. Because in comfort, there's no growth. In comfort, it's literally stagnation. Because comfort kills dreams and opportunity.
Mm. Yeah.
It's in discomfort, or I will say in constant, never ending improvement, where we're looking and we're raising that standard. It doesn't mean that we don't celebrate, though. And this is where sometimes people get it mistaken. And I'd love to hear how you celebrate victories and growth and setting the next standard for self.
Yeah. Well, two things I definitely want to go backwards for a second, because I think
Please.
it's super important. I had to, when I started doing shadow work for myself, overcoming addiction and self sabotage, and the self saboteur part of myself, is I realized a lot when it came to setting goals, because I was super blocked versus on the
Mhm.
settlement. And I settled because I was setting backup goals, because I lost
Yes.
belief in my ability to achieve my authentic goals. Getting back to the word authentic, like, what do I truly want? Not what I think
Mhm.
I'm capable of, but what do I truly want? So I think it's important to also ask yourself, like, what am I setting backup goals because I don't believe in my ability to actually achieve what it is that I really want, or that I can have what I really want? Because this actually does play back into the celebration part and motivation. And if you understand that motivation is not reliable. Motivation, but if you learn how to leverage off of motivation, where I love using motivation as bribes. So how can I bribe myself? Maybe it's a beach walking meditation, which I do like every Thursday morning, or sometimes I'll take a half day and I'll rollerblade to the beach and I'll meditate, do an ocean plunge. So those are things that are like more costing my time. But what does it cost me to not show up for those things? Right? So that's the question I always ask. What is it costing me to not do this?
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Because oftentimes people are looking at, oh, the cost factor. And I go, well, what's the investment?
Mm-hmm.
See, I can make more money. I cannot manifest more time. I'm not that good yet. I'm not that in
quality. And there was one thing I heard says like, time is never wasted if it's enjoyed.
Yes. Yes. I have seen some people try to park time. And I'm like, how do you do that? And they go, so they were talking about that they park their time, they'll go into like deep meditation state and it seems like time disappears. And I said, but here's the thing. I said, I get it, but yet if I look at the hands of the clock, it still comes at a cost. So time is the one gift and blessing that we have that has a constant burn rate. Sleeping, time. Enjoyment, time. Fulfillment, time. Enterprise, time. And I said, okay, great. So to your point, I love what you said. And I started looking at this, and this was something that was huge. When I got this lesson, it really helped me change my life on a number of different levels. Because my time with my wife and my kids is priceless. My time with loved ones and friends and people that I love and respect in conversation, priceless. I can't even put a number on it, because the level of enjoyment and engagement and energy exchange is phenomenal. I said, now there's some other engagements that aren't at as high a frequency, but I do realize what my time is worth an hour. And so I choose not to squander it now.
Which you made up too.
Absolutely.
I hear this all the time. Even if it's a high number, I'm like, you still made it up. It's all made up.
Oh, absolutely. It's all hypothetical. Yeah. And then I remind myself of what I heard. I wasn't there, unfortunately, with him at the time when he passed, but my Irish grandfather. And my dad said, and this was beautiful, and I've actually heard this from my Japanese grandfather as well before he passed. He said, just be careful that you don't waste your heartbeats. You are born with a certain number. And slow down, lad. Not everything's a race. Enjoy love, enjoy happiness, enjoy peace and connection, enjoy and revel in the gift of passion, enjoy and understand and appreciate pain. Because it gives you lessons. And so I've learned, ironically, Tanya, how to slow down a little bit, and it's been a beautiful blessing. But I'm also a junkie for momentum. And so it's like, because when it is. Well, and that's the thing. So I find, for at least myself, I'm seeking harmony. Yeah. I'm never looking for balance. That's kind of that's kind of horse trading. And
balance doesn't exist. It's like priorities exist, but balance doesn't exist.
Balance to me is very binary. Yeah. And so I look at and I go, right? I mean, and I apologize. Sorry, y'all, but for me, it's kind of like, ooh, balance, dirty word. I go, harmony, though, feels congruent. Yeah. It feels more flowing. It feels more organic. And I love what you said earlier about reasons and seasons. We get to honor ourselves. And for all those modalities, it doesn't mean that in the dead of summer, you can't have a rainstorm. It doesn't mean that it doesn't get cool at night. I don't know if it ever gets cool in Miami, but it does get.
It does when it rains.
I was gonna say, y'all have you've had some downpours lately.
Yeah,
so,
and we have like our. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I lost you for just a moment there. You have your what? I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're great now. You're so. No, so again, every season has its hiccups as well. Like we were just having this conversation earlier. You can actually have a rainstorm or you can have a snowstorm in the middle of June in Colorado. They just
Mhm.
had like a pour, uh,
Yeah.
of snow, and it's like, oh wait, what? I go, yeah, it's Colorado. Just
But I
roll it.
think that's what also got back to like our conversation of operating at peak performance, like regardless of what life throws at you, you don't know what's going to hit. You
Right.
have these plans, but there also has to be flexibility within and a quiet like certainty and peace within the storms. And that's really what like this journey is about. That's what the growth work is about, is finding your peace within the chaos.
Absolutely. And this really goes back systemically to what your client asked you, which is how do you find the confidence? How do you
Mhm.
find that inner peace, to your point? And
Mhm.
I grew up with this philosophy that fortune favors a prepared mind and soul.
Mm.
It doesn't say your pocketbook. It doesn't say, that you have all the skill because we're constantly learning. No one was prepared completely for 2008. No one was completely, prepared for COVID when they
No one's
said,
prepared for this year either. Well, I think we are kind of anticipating something was gonna happen, but
well, but that's the difference though too. So there's a difference between people living in fear and anticipation by
yeah.
comparison to preparedness
Mhm.
and opportunity. And
Mhm.
so what's the difference? And I said, it's exactly your point. Perspective, belief,
Mhm.
certainty. Are
Mhm.
you exercising your rituals so that way you're staying in a space and in a state as well that continues to fuel you?
Yeah.
Because other people's anxiety, if that's who you're choosing to live around, you again call your life, show me the top 5 people you're spending the most time with, and we can start to find out and extrapolate why
Yeah.
you may be manifesting some of the feelings and emotions that you've been feeling.
Mhm.
What are some of your favorite? And I love what you shared earlier about the 3 optics to look at. What are some of your favorite exercises to help people understand themselves personally and professionally? Because there's some people who identify and have such a strong identity wrapped around their profession. I have friends who are physicians
Yeah.
and they prefer to be called Dr. John or Dr. Rick or Dr. Bob, or it's like going, oh, okay, I know you as Bob, Rick, and sorry, I the doctor thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
I knew you before you were a physician.
Yeah. Actually, I wrote this down and I did want to like circle back because I think it's really important is there's 2 reasons why people aren't moving forward in life, whether it being mentally, emotionally, energetically, spiritually, especially when we're so attached to labels,
Mm-hmm.
is resistance and attachment.
Yes.
And when you had talked about slowing down, not wasting your heartbeat, and like really feeling your breath, people aren't going to do it because they don't understand why it's important and relevant in their situation or in their season in life. When you understand you're powerless in a negative state of energy and thought, then you're like, wait, I don't want to be powerless. And your breath controls the rate at which your heart beats,
Absolutely.
that you can then control and regulate your emotional state no matter what's going on. So if you're living in anxiety, that means you're living predominantly in the future. If you're living in depression, you're predominantly living in the past. And the only way to live in peace with clarity and being in your full authentic power is learning how to be fully present. And that's
Yeah.
really living in your full potential. So getting back to this of understanding self, understanding what the things that you're resisting.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand, resistance is really just understanding why is this important to me right now, like, or why should this be important. And most people, that's where that rebellious side of you is going to like calm down, because you're like, oh, if she told me to go left, it's not that like she's trying to tell me what to do, is that she has my back, but I need to go left because that's going to get me to where I want to be in the fastest rate possible. And that's really what I want. So that's an alignment. And the second one is attachment, like was you were talking about labels and names, like, why am I so attached to this? Like maybe it makes me feel important. Maybe I feel I worked really hard and I'm entitled to this and I deserve to be treated with respect, because maybe you going back into childhood stuff where I was bullied. and this is my way of like putting on my cape
Yep.
and hiding behind my insecurities. And it's not bad. It's just understanding why we're behaving and why we act and why we make decisions a certain way. And when we learn to get out of our own way, we can really receive our true blessings in life and get to levels we never even thought were possible. Have conversations like I get to have conversations with somebody like yourself that I knew I was doing good. I knew that I was doing the work because my frequency is now attracting a stronger, higher caliber of a network. And so if my self-worth, it has gone up and my network has gone up, then my net worth is going to also go up. Value, value, value.
They're all interrelated. And
Yes.
to your point,
Just like a triangle.
it is. Well, and it's interesting.
I don't know if I did a gang sign, but I was making a triangle, you guys.
No. That's called the triad. We like it, although they do exist in Asia. And so, so one of the things that you brought up, and thank you for bringing it back full circle. One of the reasons why I realize now, after 35 years of studying behavioral sciences, is that your breath, and when you slow your breath down, yes, it affects your heart rate. It also affects how your vagus nerve connects. And when we slow down, it connects body, mind, and spirit. That's why yoga breathing techniques, martial arts, in sports, athletics, even if you're doing things like military training. My dad was in the Navy for 30 years. And you start to learn all these different modalities about breathing techniques. Well, it's the rule in behavioral sciences is that in the triad, there's physiology, focus, and language. If you change any one of the three, you change the experience. The number one, though, is physiology first. And the simplest way to help people shift and to get back to their baseline identity, if we want to call it, to their initial primary operating system, is to breathe. Because when you're in your mother's womb, you were breathing amniotic fluid. You were ingesting oxygen and nutrients through your umbilical cord. And then when you came into this world, the first thing you did, your heart's been beating this entire time for, 8.5 months before you bless this universe. And as you take your first breath, it's the universe is setting programming, and it's saying, this is your reset switch. This is like, you see kids playing video games. They go, oh, well, how do they get better video games? Because they reset the freaking video game. They know exactly where to stop it. They know how to go ahead and reset it, and they know how to go ahead and get advanced to the next level. And they're going, freaking brilliant. You could learn so much by watching kids play a video game. And yet we're so hard on ourselves. And we feel like we have to, in many instances, not always, when you learn the shortcut of when you learn how to shift your identity, you can actually eliminate some of the stopgap measures of the judgment, beratement, and negation simply by slowing down and owning self. And so I thank you so much, Tanya, for bringing that back full circle. It's one of the most primary things that we all have access to in resourcefulness is to be able to breathe.
Yeah. And when you just saw what I did is it brings you back to your heart. Your heart is your life force. And what I do and what I teach my clients is like at any point is like when you have the sensation, right? Senses, you put your heart has its own regulation of its own nervous system.
It does.
It has its own memory. And what you're talking about, the reason of the body is it's called cellular memory impressions. So we have cellular memory impressions. We have cellular memory releasing. This is all epigenetic stuff, the power of reprogramming our belief system. And one thing that I love by one of my mentors, Dr. Joe Dispenza, is he says, your personality shapes your personal reality.
Absolutely.
So when you change your personality, which is a process, your ecosystem, your personality is like inner work, your personal reality will shift. So one thing to pay attention to, you mentioned earlier, is like ecosystem, and look at your environment.
Yes.
Look at your environment and who am I attracting? And sometimes you're going to have to go through this ostrich phase. And one of my mentors, when I was doing shadow work for 8 years, she said, most people would rather sit in poo. I'm not going to curse, but most people would rather sit in their poo, versus live in a space of emptiness for just a season.
Yes. Yes. And the greatest spiritual minds and souls will tell you that in meditation, what they're seeking is no mind, which means no judgment. They're not even looking to measure at that point. They're really looking to expand and to feel.
Mhm.
And you said something which is really it's brilliant, and that is when we start to look at the ecology of who we become and why we become, there's this precedent of who are we? And there's this kind of fundamental question that I know I went through as a kid. You asked why, some people don't may not be able to relate to kind of the Cliff Notes version of what we're giving folks today, because we could go way deeper, and we're still keeping a pretty high chunk. Uh,
Yeah.
I really believe that one of the reasons why you and I connect at such a deep level is that through struggle, uh, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2009, and it was interesting. It was something that came out of the blue, and I'm like, going, okay.
But did it really come out of the blue?
Um,
Maybe for your awareness.
I will say the underlying stressors,
Mhm.
no. Like what I put myself through with a type A personality and being involved in 6 different companies, the writing was on the wall. It
Yeah.
just came as a big surprise because there was no diminishment in energy or attraction strategy or community. There, I found a bump. That it's that simple. And so all of a sudden, it's like started creating other meanings. But the reason why I share this is when I started to really reevaluate what life meant to me and who I needed to be around
Mm.
and my whys and how I needed to feel most often. And so I love what you said about running a self inventory, because this is something I do every day, but it takes me 2.5 minutes a day. I do
Mhm.
it for a minute at night. Or actually, I take that back. It's a minute and a half at night and it's a minute in the morning. And it's really simple. At the end of the day, I said, how did I feel most often?
Mhm.
And what did that mean? What were the experiences? What allowed me to have these experiences and these interactions? And then I ask myself the most important question, and that is, how do I need to feel tomorrow? So I give grace to the moment, the blessings of the lessons and the learnings, and I make, when I write this down in my journal, I actually commit to something else, and that is, how can I share this with other people?
Mm.
Because when we get these distinctions, it's really our responsibility to kind of keep them in your back pocket and have them as a lesson. It doesn't become a lesson until it's actually exercise, where you actually start to see the manifestation and the opportunity that comes from it.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's just, oh, that's a great thought. Oh, that was, hyperbole or a hypothecated situation. I go, no, it was real. I felt it, they felt it, and it was remarkable. And it's relevant to
Mm.
your point, because your network and your net worth start to shift as you elevate
Yeah.
and when it becomes more communal as well.
Mhm.
Man,
Yeah.
yes, you are just such a wealth of knowledge and information and
I
insight.
I do wanna say this because you said the same thing, but the way that I asked this, when I was started really learning about and doing a deep dive into energy psychology
Mhm.
was who what do I need to overcome and who do I need to become?
Mm,
Because that also comes back to the authenticity of staying true to what you're wanting.
yes.
And what you want is gonna be different in each season of your life. And how I like what made sense to a lot of people as I explained it was like, especially when you become an adult, like, when you're in like middle school, like I don't a lot of people don't really remember kindergarten. Maybe you do, but you're like kindergarten, you're like, oh, I'm going to middle school. I get to be the safety patrol. And then you have like something to look forward to. And then middle school, you got high school, and you're constantly like have a forward movement mindset. And then something happens after high school or college. It's like the brain stops the forward movement mindset after 25, where you're actually like looking forward to something.
Mhm.
And I kind of like explain it like this. It's like, why, like, you don't have to take last season into this new season with you, just like you didn't have to take middle school into high school. You have to become a different person. You have a new curriculum, you have a new course, you have new challenges, you have a curriculum designed for you to go to the next level.
Mhm.
And as entrepreneurs and leaders and business people striving to the next thing, is we keep taking last season into our new seasons. And that's why we constantly feel like stuck.
I love what you just said, and there's a reason for it.
Mm.
When our baseline psychology, because heart set is based on mindset is based on heart set. And so when someone is feeling fulfillment or a level of success or comfort in their prior experience, what they do in order to facilitate having a sense of security is that they will glom on or link on to whatever prior success they had and use that as the foundation or stepping stone or building stone. And we often hear this, and I'm sure you heard this a billion times, my friend, and that is, oh, I've been doing that for decades. Oh, because I have this many years of experience. And what excites me, it's kind of like the Simon Sinek ideology goes, I'm excited to learn some new stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yes, I have a lifetime of experiences. I've been 56 years on this planet. I've got some time in the saddle. And I go, all that's given me is the opportunity to know I have a PhD in screw ups.
Lessons?
Always. No,
lessons
but
or blessings?
I love my screw ups. I mean, for me, and I use it in that kind of playful way, even smiling, because I go, those were priceless lessons that I took away.
Mm-hmm.
And the learnings that came from them, I could never put a price tag on.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't even try to. And so to that point, I find that there are many people who are relying on their pedigree, who are relying on their past history as their benchmark for moving forward. And I see this a lot in the education system now, Tanya, where professors who have great bookwork knowledge, but they haven't been out in the field for a long time. They haven't been practicing.
You guys do not hire people that are not actually doing what you want to do. Like, please do not hire people that do not own businesses, that are not entrepreneur for business advice.
Yes.
What you're saying reminds me of like food. You know, when you used to have like a favorite food when you were younger, and then you have that cellular memory because it's cellular memory, and then you eat it as an adult and it made you sick. That's like the best analogy I could use for it. It's like it makes you sick in this season, but you do have the memory that it brought you a lot of pleasure and at one point in your life.
I don't think I could choke down a Twinkie right now. I really don't. Knowing what's in them, I don't think I could. I don't think my body would even, because I haven't had sugar.
But you had phenomenal memories as a kid.
Oh my gosh, as a kid, it was a party in plastic. Come on. That would last forever. There's only 3 things.
Or like Halloween, right? Like all those like goodie bags. Like, forget it. No.
Oh yeah, the stories I have. No, this is so amazing and wonderful. I love the level of discussion, and on a number of different levels. You know, I know that you're someone as an athlete who takes care of herself physically as well. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, we're finding people that they'll exercise intellectual, I'll say vitality. They'll exercise physical vitality. What would you say are some of the largest precedents right now when it comes to spiritual vitality?
Well, I feel like there's a sequence to it and you can't skip steps, but the fastest way to get there is the physical, mental, emotional, and then spirituality can throw people off with the word. So I keep it very neutral as far as like energy.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I want to charge my energy? And that would be meditation. Meditation is also putting in the reps. It's a daily non-negotiable. It's prayers when you speak to God, and meditation is when God or higher self or your super conscious speaks to you. And it really just gets you connected to a version of yourself that you can fully trust. So we have multiple versions of ourselves, and not all of them, as we can all agree, are trustworthy.
Yeah.
But that is the segment of yourself, that all knowing, that all being, that intuition, and when you carve out time every single day to sit in a meditative practice and you learn how to meditate. I've spent a lot of money on meditation. I've done work with Dr. Joe Dispenza. I practice it daily. And you get better at it. Remember, you're going to suck until you become somewhat good. And you become good until you become better. And then you're better until you become great. So just keep putting in the reps.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, Tanya, I mean, you're a blessing. I'd love to have you back. And
Thank you.
And then we can talk about anything. How does someone find out more about you? How can they reach out and connect directly with you. If you've been inspired by this amazing woman and you'd like to know more and get even more distinctions, how can they reach out to you?
There's a few ways. I'm very, very active on my Instagram account, which is at Tanya C. Oliver. My website, tanyacoliver.com. And I have a free gift for the audience. It's just tanyacoliver.com/calendar. And it's a 90-day sprint calendar. So they can also get access to just like emails and also something free, you know, like a free way of auditing their day. We talked about daily audits. It's just a way of learning how to have self-honesty, audit your day, and shape-shift your belief system.
Tanya, you're amazing. Give it up, everyone, for the one and only Tanya Oliver. Appreciate you.
And for you as well, Chuck. This is a great conversation. Thank you. It's a two-way street.
Pleasure's all mine. All mine. And I just want to remind our viewers that the show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please come check it out for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thank you, Tanya.